epiphany?
No, ownership. I'm only partly to blame. All my children had a great relationship with me until the divorces.
So 18 kids, right?
Yes, and I had a great relationship
many
with my
wives?
children. There were 4. There is 1.
Okay.
Okay. So when the divorces happened, the children were the victims of the divorce, and they had to pick sides, and they had a closer relationship because of polygamy to their mothers.
Hey besties, welcome back to my channel. It was 8:30 this morning when I realized that Kody was a liar. Just kidding. I've known this for as long as I've talked about Kody Brown. But the finale is coming up this week of Special Forces. And Kody was in New York apparently yesterday, and he was speaking with the Fox affiliate of New York, whatever channel that is, and on their morning show. And he was asked about things that came up during the show and how these things that came up during the show pushed him, right? And he was asked about like the physical versus the mental. And he said that it wasn't necessarily the physical that was hard for him, it was the mental. And they showed the clip of Kody being grilled by the drill sergeants about how he behaved during his relationships and the aftermath with these divorces, and how Kody wasn't taking responsibility for his role in what happened with the family. And on the show, literally, remember we did a video on this a couple weeks ago, he cried and cried and cried. And he said that, he took ownership and he didn't admit he was wrong because he hates admitting that he's wrong. Let me re-show you the clip.
Are you taking ownership right now?
My failures was because I didn't know about being a good dad and husband, and I thought I did. I really thought I did. And I misunderstood that, and I did it wrong in so many ways, and I hated being blamed for it. And so it made me resistant to ownership.
That resistance or not wanting to be blamed, it's a very adolescent way of looking at things.
I'll take that.
So you remember a couple weeks ago, I said that I didn't believe a word he was saying. And I said that he was just using tears to manipulate, and he was making excuses, and he was saying I didn't understand how to be a father and I didn't like being wrong, and that's why I wasn't doing things. And there could have been a kernel of truth in there. Like, I truly believe he doesn't like to be wrong. I think that Kody is the kind of guy that if he has to be vulnerable and it doesn't, if there's a crack in the facade that he's this tough guy that's very masculine and very capable and very, alpha, and he has to admit he's wrong, it like erodes his self-confidence and his ego that he's like this amazing alpha guy that does everything right, He's a pathological liar, and he reminds me of a lot of other very pathological liar men that are in our society. And he's a narcissist. And so I remember when I watched it, I was like, he's lying, because there's no way he's actually going to change anything. There's no way he's going to take responsibility. I said, if he's going to take responsibility, he would repair the relationships with his kids. He would actually have the foresight to understand that it was his role. He would stop claiming that it was, an equal responsibility, because when it comes to children, it's not an equal responsibility. He was the parent, they are the kids, and it was his choices as a father, right? I knew he was full of it. And so yesterday, when he's interviewed by these 2 lovely human beings over in New York, he flat out admits that he lied. He admits he lied to the DSs about his role. And he again goes back to his same talking points that it wasn't his fault. And he says that the children were the victims of the divorce, and they had to choose a side because, and that because they had to choose a side, they naturally chose their mothers because of polygamy. So instead of like blaming his own position and his own role. He's going to blame the system. And sure, there is a level of the system that makes it so that Kody doesn't have a relationship with his kids, but it's also Kody's behavior that contributes to that and how he treats the kids, right? And if you don't treat your children well and you don't have a good relationship with them and you don't care about them and you look at them as objects, they're of course not going to go with you. And if you belittle them and berate them and call them names, right? And so he doesn't take responsibility. So here's what he tells them. And I can't believe he's admitting this. I mean, you have clips of him literally saying, I take accountability. And then he goes on to this show and says, I don't really take accountability.
So it was just a natural movement that they moved away from me. And that hurt me. And so I was doing the best that I could through the entire situation, but it tended to get very, very toxic because every one of our flaws and our faults is being portrayed by another person, pointing a finger in my other show.
Okay, so the kids moved away from him because naturally polygamy, right? And then he admits that things got toxic because of their show, people were allowed to share their feelings. And the irony here is that if you think of how these people had to live under Kody's rule and is basically being trafficked by him because he was the one making all the money and using it for whatever he wanted, they finally speak their truth about what happened. You know, they stop covering for him. They stop pretending like he's this great guy. They share how they've been treated and he doesn't like hearing it. And he was able to control them for so long on that show. And he was able to like control that they said things about him and the narrative. And then he lost control of the narrative. I mean, that's really what he's saying here. That's what I'm hearing is that because of the show, they were able to share what happened. And he didn't like hearing it and he didn't want to be blamed for it. He didn't like hearing the truth of what happened, what we all saw. And, you know, to me, if you're going to just sit there and blame the show for what happened and you're going to blame that you don't like what you're hearing on the show, there's no reason to keep filming. If it's causing this much pain in your life and it's causing so much disconnect and like it's hurting your family and it's hurting your relationships, maybe don't do a reality show. Maybe don't put out all your drama on TV. Like there's a really good way around that. It's not doing the show. I'm sure a lot of the adult children would be amazed if they would quit, but they won't. And so it's just another tool to deflect. And it gets worse.
And as they left, we were both responsible for it. But I'm in a military type of situation here with Rudy and Billy. And I felt like the only military way to manage this is to take full responsibility. If you're partly culpable, you're fully culpable. It's just like ownership. And so I went into it going, yeah, I was the problem. I was the one that made the mistakes. But in all reality, it's to be shared with ex-wives.
This is a really strange way to deflect the question because if you watched the episode of the Special Forces, they were talking about how he managed his relationships with his children, right? And that it was his responsibility as a father to take that role and to take the ownership. And here Kody is deflecting and saying, well, no, I mean, I was just saying that. Like he literally just admitted, I just said that because I was in a military situation. So I had to take ownership, but I really wasn't telling the truth. So he's admitting that he lied to those guys to tell them what they wanted to hear so that he could get out of the situation, but he didn't mean a lick of it. Meaning Kody admits that he walks into a situation, tells people what he thinks they want to hear to get out of the situation so that he can simply get out of the situation, not because he actually means it. He lies. And then he goes back to, well, it's really their fault. The conversation between the DSs had to do with his role as a father, right? And also the women, what is he talking about? Take ownership. What is he talking about? You mean the ownership where they were under his thumb, under his control? How do you have an equal relationship when you are in a submissive, subservient role and you have no authority or power to do anything? How do you have any right to take ownership of anything when you're in a role where he controls your life? The only person that's at fault here is Kody. Now, if the woman stayed because of their belief system and because they were in an abusive marriage and an abusive environment, it takes years for women to leave abusive partners. The cycle of abuse and Kody's games is what kept them in the cycle of abuse, and their indoctrination is what kept them in the cycle of abuse. The only person that's at fault for abuse is the abuser, and telling a victim that they are responsible for the abuse that they suffered and speaking about the abuse that they suffered is ridiculous.
Wives, I think, is claiming that you made her or wanted her to sign an NDA. Anything to that?
That was on a, that's so crazy. No, that was all something that a legal representative, a lawyer had said, you better just do this. And this is part of and it was all about a business transaction that was happening. It wasn't part of the show. Gosh, so things, get really misconstrued and misunderstood. The problem was the two of us were only talking through lawyers at the time.
I speak Kody, I'm fluent in it. And when Kody says something is not about something, it means it is. So in this case, if Kody says that was just a silly NDA that was for and recommended by a lawyer, I hate how he says lawyer. He really enunciates the why. He says it wasn't about the show. It was only about the business transaction or the real estate transaction. Okay. I've said this a million times in the last few weeks. There's nothing you could have for an NDA about the property because all of the documents for the sale are in the county. They are recorded with the county. So you and me and anyone else that's in the public can go to Coconino County and we can see how the division went, right? We can see when documents were signed. We can verify if things were done when they said they were done as per the show. We've already exposed that Kody and Robin lied on the show and acted like Mary held things up when it was really Robin that refused to sign because of this NDA. They wanted her to sign an NDA and she refused. And he says that it's about the real estate. There's no way you could have an NDA when it comes to the real estate simply because it's all recorded. It's all public. If there was something in their negotiations that had to do with something illegal, like say, I'm going to pay you back for the money that you gave me for Robin's house. Sure, maybe there. I don't know, because he doesn't want the public exposure of Mary, exposing fraud or something. Although in general, lawyers are not supposed to engage in fraudulent activity, though we know that this happens all the time. And we've seen it so much in the last year covering the Blake Lively case. We've also seen it play out very publicly in the media with just the way things are happening currently in the world without going into specifics. So we know it's not beyond a lawyer to engage in fraudulent activity. But for Kody to say it's not about the show means it was about the show. It was absolutely about the show. Why else would he demand an NDA? In the same interview, he said the reason why he got so angry and he couldn't handle himself and things got toxic was because people were blaming him and he didn't like the feedback. And because he didn't like the feedback, he got angry and he exploded. That's an excuse, right? You can control your emotions. You cannot respond. I mean, listen, I get angry about things in the last couple of days with what's been happening with the Epstein case and for the survivors in that case. It's been really infuriating to watch what's been going on the last several months. I've been watching this so closely and I've just been feeling heartbroken for the survivors. And I have my husband and I have had some conversations behind the scenes and it's I'm angry. I'll get my voice gets heated and we're not yelling at each other, but we're just so frustrated for these women. And that's one thing, right? But to not hear what you want to hear from someone and then start yelling and having a temper tantrum and then smearing these people on reality television. And then, you're okay with your narrative, right? You're okay with what you have to say. And as long as your narrative is what's the prevailing narrative publicly, that's all that matters. Up until they all left, they stood by him and kissed his butt and they said nothing negative about him. I mean, maybe they would say things under their breath or they would express their discontent or their frustrations, but it was nothing once Christine and Janelle started fracturing with Kody and things really started moving, that's when the floodgates started opening. And that was, we're not protecting you anymore, right? And Kody doesn't like that they're not protecting him anymore. And really what Cody's saying is they exposed my real behavior. And this is actually how I always act. And I have an explosive behavior. And I'm not at fault, but it's their fault. And I actually don't take responsibility for what happened with my kids. I just said that to those people on the show because I didn't want to deal with the feedback and I needed to get out of the situation. And so I manipulated my way out. Now, the best part of this entire episode or this interview was Kurt Menefee. And I only know Kurt from the NFL Sunday morning show on Fox. My husband and I watch that. And he's so funny. He's like, at the end of the interview, he's like, well, it was interesting to get to know you, or it was interesting to meet you. Like, you could tell that Kurt was like, who is this weirdo? You are so weird. And that's the sense that people have when they're around him. I mean, Kody admits that he irritated his cast members, that he called Randall Cobb the wrong name the entire time he was on the series. During this interview, he calls Sean and Andrew East Sean and Andrew West. And then he just is like, well, I can't remember names. I just do that all the time. I just have a big mouth. I don't stop talking. Even if it's like you don't like it, I'll just keep talking just because that's me having a big mouth. LOL. And Kurt was like, oh, okay. Bye, Kody. So when Cody's out in the wild, people think he's weird. Just so we're all on the same page here. So what are your thoughts about this? Are you surprised to see that Cody's lying? Are you not surprised? Are you just like, oh, you guys, this is standard Kody Brown. This is just what this man does. Katie, we've been watching this for how many years? We knew it was this. And what do you think about Kody admitting to lying? Do you think he even knows that he did that? Tell me in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, besties.